Well, good morning. It's Valerie Milano, the senior editor of the Hollywood Times, and we're going to be talking about a film called Bonded. And we have Chloe Burns, and I'm going to let her go ahead and introduce herself, please. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, I am Chloe Burns, and I am the screenwriter, executive producer, and lead actor for the series Trauma Bonded.
Yay. Thank you for being here with us. This is a series that touches on themes of domestic violence and dual personalities with an element of espionage
Mhm.
and psychotherapy. And it's very thought provoking and darkly funny. And at the same time, there's a certain sadness for the main characters. So we will put a we will put a little spoiler alert in our review. Um, so this is billed as a series, and we see 6 episodes of what I assume is a season one. Is there a second season for Trauma Bonded, or is this it, a self-contained 6 episode journey?
I would say it kind of depends. There is a second season written, but in terms of what I do next, I'm gonna say it kind of depends on what demand is for. So I have a few different projects that I'd be excited to pursue any one of them. But yes, there is a second season. It could keep going. But yeah, for now, I mean, the idea of doing the 6 episodes was that it could stand alone as its own limited series as well. So it really could go either way.
The story is, to say the least, unique. It was a drama, humor. It has all those things, and even an element of stand up.
Mhm.
What was the inspiration for the story?
So the inspiration for it came out of actually the dual personalities are definitely supposed to be more metaphor than reality. Um, it wasn't really meant to be a realistic portrayal of like dissociative identity disorder. But that came out of my own therapy. I was going through EMDR therapy for trauma recovery, reprocessing traumatic memories so that they're not essentially triggering anymore, and to help me essentially not be living with trauma symptoms. And so the dual personalities came out of this kind of struggle that I was having, almost of like, who am I now? Because I felt like as a kid, I felt really open to the world. I had just a really optimistic, positive outlook on people, and then I had this violent relationship and a few other unrelated things that kind of happened around the same time. Um, and after those, I felt, angry. I felt really like jaded about the world and about people, but I felt like my personality hadn't caught up to that. And so I still felt like I was, I wanted to work in comedy. That's where the stand-up came from. But it felt almost like I'd gone through too many dark things to be allowed to do that anymore. And so the dual personalities was kind of me trying to cope with that. Like, are you the person you were before these things happened? Do they make you into somebody new? And then how can it just felt like I could not reconcile those two things together. And so that's where the idea of the series came from, was like, what if they're literally two separate personalities? What would it take to get them to kind of integrate? What would that look like? And then, you ask about a second season. My second season would be, what is this integrated person? Like, how does that look? Who is that person when those personalities come together? But this 6 episodes is a story of how it almost feels like you have to get pushed to confront those things and like face yourself again.
The stand-up element is really a monologue, isn't it? Where Kate
Mhm.
gets to vent and let the audience know what she's all about, and in her view, what Casey is all about, right?
Right. Yeah. The stand-up is Casey essentially. And again, it's all kind of metaphorical. It's the spotlight on her during the stand-up routine is kind of, in my opinion, how it feels to be in therapy. Um, Being in therapy feels like someone's putting this big light on you. You're just kind of alone in this dark room trying to put words to your experience so somebody can help you process it. But it's a very obviously vulnerable, intimidating thing. And so for Casey's character, it's that thing she's now kind of learning what really happened in this relationship, that we don't see any of the relationship on screen. It happened in the past. But she's kind of reconciling it, like facing it for the first time under the spotlight. And then at the end of the monologue, Kate, the other personality, also kind of lets loose about her real opinions about who Casey is. So it's one personality reckoning with what happened to her, and the other personality reckoning with who she is kind of trapped in a body with.
Do the personas of Kate and Cassie represent the inner struggle we all face in choosing who we will show to others as our authentic selves? And does Dan represent the evil in the world that comes to us as a friendly ally, a wolf in sheep's clothing, so to speak?
I would say absolutely the personality is yes, is the internal struggle. Yeah, who am I today? Am I, more Casey? Am I trying to be more likable, more people pleasing? Or today, am I going to put on this kind of hard outer shell of Kate and just basically say, like, back off? And that kind of oscillating between the two. I felt that a lot. I don't know if it came across quite as dramatically, but I felt for years very like either someone's going to hurt you or you've got to be like pleasing everybody. And I just kind of went back and forth. Dan is actually meant to represent, this was something I ran into with people thinking that he was meant to be the abusive ex-boyfriend. He's not. He is truly someone in Kate's life who really wants to get close to her. And that's what's so threatening feeling about him, is that he really does like her. He really does want to know more about her. And she is just so guarded that feels violating. But he is actually supposed to represent, like, if you haven't dealt with your issues the way that Kate has not, the perfect person is still going to feel like a threat, because you are not ready to receive that yet. That's kind of, yeah, what that dynamic is meant to represent.
Well, you were brilliant in the dual roles, and Vivian King as Mads, Cameron Saffle from Ashton Kutcher lookalikes, as Ben and Becki Hayes and Dr. Pine were simply perfect. Um, in a word, the cast had, chemistry. Did you know them before you cast them? How did they come into the project?
Yeah, so I met Cam, who plays Dan. I met him in an acting class in Los Angeles, and I actually wrote the role kind of with him in mind. Um, and so that I knew ahead of time. Vivian and Becki were both part of our casting process, and so we put the casting call out, took different auditions, went through the process, and Vivian really had what I felt like Mads needed to have. She needed to have like an internal strength about her, because the plot of the script is essentially a kidnapping of Mads. She didn't know that her girlfriend had this other personality. She gets kind of swept along to this new location with all these people that she doesn't know. And so if Mads doesn't have an internal strength to her, if you don't trust that on some level she can handle it, it quickly becomes like a Dateline episode. And it kind of loses its humor because you're afraid for her. And so I wanted someone who had like that fight in her. And Vivian just showed up with that energy, and she was ready to improv. She was ready to play. She brought a lot of ideas, one of them being the roast of of Dan, she asked Cam ahead of time, is it okay if I kind of roast you a little bit? Here's what I'm thinking. And then she just like let loose and just delivered physical comedy, and she just brought a lot to it. And then Becki, for the therapist, it was kind of similar. The therapist, and I've had these moments in therapy where sometimes they have to be kind of tough love with you and say, like, you do need to face this. I'm here to help guide you through that process. But somebody asked me actually, why did you make the therapist the villain? And I was like, because sometimes that's how it feels when you're in therapy and, you know, this person is sitting there, they're trying to help you. And you're like, I don't really want your help right now. Like, I loved my therapist, but I had days where I was really dreading seeing her because they do probe those really painful spots. But yeah, Becki had that really nurturing like presence about her, but I can also, she's also a mother. And I got the sense that she could, when she needs to, have that tough love. So yeah, everybody had to match together really well. So I'm really happy that it comes across as chemistry, because it really felt like chemistry working with them.
So what are you thinking about next? Do you have something else in mind?
Yeah, I have a few different projects that, like I said, I'm kind of seeing what the market wants, what people are excited about. For a second season, I would love to bring the same characters back. I would introduce a little more. What got people about the first season and does make it at times hard to track with is the constraints of budget, screen time. We This is a very complex situation and world, and so season 2 would build out that world a little bit more, and look at like, okay, where are we, what happened, give a little bit more backstory. But then it would be a continuation of the plot line as well. So like I said, we would get to see Casey and Kate integrating into one personality. What does that look like? I'm really excited about some kind of unexpected realities of that. And then for Mads and Dan, who now have just been through a traumatic experience, how do they cope with that? They didn't ask to be a part of any of this, but that's kind of how trauma is. How do they cope with the fact that now they are weirdly bonded by this experience? They didn't ask to be thrown together. And because of the realities of this program, this like secretive government, situation, they can't really talk about it to anybody. And so they're all kind of grappling with those realities. So that's one version. I also have a version of a kind of going back to the beginning and telling the story from the start with more time. And that version is like a half-hour pilot that could be built out into almost like a Barry meets Killing Eve type series. So that's another direction that could go. And then on my own, I have my other ideas. I'm from Kansas originally. I have like a horror on the farm kind of story. I used to, bring my friends out to the family farm and shoot horror movies. And so I also have a version of that that's just forever like marinating with me. So that's just a completely other direction that just personally I could go.
Great. Well, how can we find you? How can our viewers and our readers find you? Social media, you got a website? Talk about it.
Yeah. Right now my social media is at Trauma Bonded Series. That is also the series website. If you just look up Trauma Bonded, it's going to be all therapy articles. So it's Trauma Bonded Series. And then I made the decision to just change my personal Instagram account name to the series, because it's we're kind of one in the same.
Bonded.
So yeah, that's how to follow. Yeah.
Good. Well, I thank you for taking your time, and we'll be looking for you and helping you promote. And we're the HollywoodTimes.today, and our website is that, and the Instagram, the Hollywood.times, and our YouTube is the Hollywood Times Official. So we'll be sending out the article with part of this interview. And again, thank you for your time today, and keep us posted. And we'll
Yeah,
be
thank you
looking
so
for you as
much.
well. Great.
Absolutely.
Nice to meet you. Maybe we'll see you out there in some film festival, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, sweetie. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye bye.